What would you do if someone told you that a simple mechanic could accomplish what the world's best doctors couldn't? That a man working in a dusty garage with worn-out tools could give a paralyzed girl her freedom back? This is exactly what happened in Austin, Texas, and what you're about to hear will restore your faith in the power of human kindness. Hey everyone, welcome back to Unbroken Truths. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share real stories about real people who prove that hope and humanity are still alive in this world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let me take you to a moment that changed 3 lives forever. Daniel Traven wiped the grease from his calloused hands, the late morning sun streaming through the open garage door of his small repair shop on the outskirts of Austin. The concrete floor beneath his boots was cracked and stained with years of oil spills, and the tools hanging on the walls were older than most of his customers' cars. But Daniel never complained. This garage was his sanctuary, the place where he felt most at home. He built his reputation one honest repair at a time. People came to him because he never lied, never overcharged, and never turned away someone who genuinely needed help, even if they couldn't pay right away. In a world that often felt cold and transactional, Daniel's garage was a reminder that integrity still mattered. That Thursday started like any other. He was finishing up a brake job on an old pickup when he heard something unusual, the low, smooth purr of an expensive engine. It was a sound that didn't belong in this neighborhood, where most vehicles sputtered and wheezed their way down the street. Daniel stepped outside, squinting against the bright Texas sun, and froze. A gleaming black Range Rover was pulling into his lot, its paint so perfect it looked like liquid obsidian. For a moment, he wondered if the driver was lost. Wealthy people didn't come to places like this. They had mechanics who wore crisp uniforms and worked in air-conditioned facilities with espresso machines in the waiting room. But the SUV didn't turn around. It came to a gentle stop right in front of his garage. The rear door opened slowly, carefully, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. A young woman emerged, moving with painstaking effort. Her legs were encased in heavy metal braces that ran from her hips to her ankles, the supports rigid and unforgiving. She couldn't have been more than 19, with gentle features and soft auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But it was her eyes that struck him. Tired, yes, but fierce with a determination that spoke of battles fought every single day. Beside her stood an elegant woman in her mid-40s, dressed in a tailored cream suit that probably cost more than Daniel made in 3 months. Everything about her screamed wealth and power, from her confident posture to the way she surveyed his humble garage with a mixture of desperation and uncertainty. Daniel recognized her immediately. Everyone in Texas knew Catherine Stone. The billionaire real estate developer had her face on magazine covers, her projects reshaping city skylines across the state. But standing there in his dusty parking lot, she didn't look like an untouchable mogul. She looked like a mother who had run out of options. Catherine approached him, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. "Are you the mechanic?" Her voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the edge of desperation beneath it. "Yes, ma'am. Daniel Traven. What can I do for you?" She glanced back at the Range Rover, where steam was beginning to curl from under the hood. "Our engine started overheating on the highway. My driver said this was the nearest garage." She paused, looking around at the modest setup with barely concealed doubt. "Can you help us?" "I can take a look," Daniel said, already moving toward the vehicle. But his eyes kept drifting back to the young woman, who was struggling to maintain her balance even while standing still. The braces looked painful, forcing her legs into an unnatural position, and he could see the strain on her face with every tiny movement. As he popped the hood and began examining the cooling system, he couldn't stop thinking about those braces. Something about them bothered him, not because she needed them, but because they looked wrong, inefficient. Like someone had built them with no real understanding of how weight and motion worked together. He found the problem with the Range Rover quickly, a faulty thermostat that needed replacing. "I can fix this," he called out. "But it'll take about an hour. There's a bench in the shade if you'd like to wait." Catherine nodded gratefully and helped her daughter settle onto the worn wooden bench outside the garage. Daniel tried to focus on the repair, but he kept glancing over at them. The girl, he heard Catherine call her Lily, and she was clearly in pain. She shifted constantly, trying to find a position that didn't hurt, but the rigid braces made comfort impossible. Finally, Daniel couldn't stay silent any longer. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked over, kneeling down to her eye level with a gentle expression. "I'm sorry if this is too personal," he said quietly, "but are those braces supposed to feel that uncomfortable?" Lily's eyes widened in surprise. Most people either stared at her legs or made a point of looking anywhere else. No one ever just asked. "They always feel like this," Lily said softly, her voice carrying a weight of resignation that broke Daniel's heart. "I've had different versions since I was 8. After the accident, the doctors said I'd probably never walk without support." Catherine moved closer. Her protective instincts immediately activated. But there was something in Daniel's expression, a genuine concern, not pity, that made her pause. "What kind of accident?" Daniel asked gently, respecting the boundary between curiosity and intrusion. Lily took a breath. "Car crash. We were hit by a drunk driver on our way home from my piano recital. My spine was damaged. I had 3 surgeries in the first year alone." She managed a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm lucky to be alive. That's what everyone always says." "You are lucky," Daniel agreed, "but that doesn't mean you should have to suffer every day." Catherine's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. She sat down beside her daughter, and for the first time, Daniel saw past the billionaire persona to the exhausted mother underneath. "We've seen every specialist in the country," Catherine said, her voice heavy with years of disappointment. "Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, specialists in Europe. We've tried experimental surgeries, cutting-edge physical therapy, devices that cost more than most people's houses." She looked at her daughter with eyes full of love and helplessness. These braces were custom-made by the leading orthotic company in America. They cost $75,000, and Lily still can't walk more than a few steps without excruciating pain. Daniel listened, his mechanic's mind already working through what he was seeing. He spent his entire life understanding how things moved, how weight distributed, how joints and pivots and pressure points worked together or against each other, and everything he was looking at told him these expensive braces were fundamentally flawed. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the braces, but not moving until Lily nodded permission. He examined them carefully, not touching Lily herself, just studying the construction. The more he looked, the more his brow furrowed. The joints were too stiff, forcing her legs into rigid positions that fought against natural movement. The weight distribution was completely uneven, putting too much pressure on her hips and knees. The supports dug into her skin at odd angles, and he could see old bruises where the metal had rubbed raw. "These are built wrong," he murmured, almost to himself. Catherine stiffened. "Excuse me?" Daniel looked up, realizing how his words must have sounded. "I'm not questioning the expertise of whoever made them, Mrs. Stone. I'm just saying, from a mechanical standpoint, the engineering is flawed. The weight, the joint mobility, the pressure distribution, it's all working against her instead of with her." "You're a car mechanic," Catherine said, not unkindly, but with clear skepticism. "What would you know about medical devices?" It was a fair question, and Daniel didn't take offense. "You're right. I fix engines and transmissions, but metal is metal, and physics is physics. Whether it's a suspension system on a truck or a support system on a person, the principles are the same. Motion, balance, stress points. I understand those things like I understand breathing." Lily was staring at him with an expression she probably seen 1,000 times but never allowed herself to feel. Hope. "Do you really think you could make them better?" Daniel hesitated. This wasn't like promising to fix a car. This was someone's life, someone's ability to move through the world. But as he looked at those poorly designed braces and saw the pain they were causing, he felt something stir inside him, a certainty he couldn't explain. "I think I could try," he said carefully. "I wouldn't charge you anything because I can't promise a miracle. I don't have medical credentials or fancy degrees. All I have is my workshop, my tools, and 20 years of understanding how to make things move the way they're supposed to move." Catherine and Lily exchanged a long look, an entire conversation happening in silence. Daniel could see the mother's fear warring with desperate hope, could see the daughter's exhaustion from living in constant discomfort, warring with the dangerous possibility that maybe things could be different. "Mom," Lily whispered, "just let him try. What's the worst that happens? They still don't work, and we're right back where we started." "Or you get hurt," Catherine said, but her voice was already softening. "I'm already hurt," Lily replied quietly. "Every single day." That simple truth hung in the air between them. Daniel waited, giving them space to make this decision without pressure. He understood what Catherine was grappling with, trusting her daughter's well-being to a stranger working out of a garage that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. Finally, Catherine turned to him, her eyes fierce with maternal protection. "If, and this is a big if, we let you attempt this, I supervise every single step. I watch everything you do, and at the first sign that anything is wrong, we stop immediately. Understood?" "Absolutely," Daniel agreed without hesitation. "I wouldn't want it any other way." "And if this works," Catherine continued, her business instincts kicking in even in this emotional moment, "if you actually manage to help my daughter when the best medical engineers in the world couldn't, we need to document everything. Record the process. Because if you can do this for Lily, there are thousands of other people who need the same help." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what she was saying. This wasn't just about one girl anymore. It was about everyone who was let down by expensive devices that prioritized appearance over function. "When can you start?" Lily asked, and the hope in her voice nearly undid him. Daniel glanced back at the Range Rover, then at his watch. "Your car will be ready in about 30 minutes. After that, if you're willing to leave the braces with me overnight, I can start analyzing them, taking measurements, figuring out exactly what needs to change." "Overnight?" Catherine looked uncertain. "Mom, I have the spare pair at home," Lily reminded her. "The old ones that barely work. I can use those for one night." After another moment of internal struggle, Catherine agreed. She helped Lily remove the braces, a process that took almost 10 minutes and left visible marks on her daughter's skin that made Daniel's jaw clench with quiet anger. Not at anyone in particular, but at the fact that something meant to help had been causing so much harm. He carried the braces into his workshop with the same care he carried a newborn, laying them out on his cleanest workbench. Catherine watched him handle them with such reverence, and something in her chest loosened slightly. Before they left, Lily touched his arm gently. "Thank you for trying," she said. "Even if it doesn't work, thank you for seeing me. Not just the disability." After they drove away, Daniel stood in his garage, staring at the braces under the harsh fluorescent lights. He thought about Lily's tired eyes, Catherine's desperate hope, and the weight of trust they just placed in his grease-stained hands. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he measured, sketched, calculated, and planned. Because somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about fixing a mechanical problem. It had become about giving a brave girl her freedom back. And Daniel Traven was not going to let her down. Daniel worked through the night like a man possessed, coffee growing cold on his workbench as he meticulously examined every inch of Lily's braces. He photographed them from every angle, measured the joints with calipers, tested the flexibility of each connection point. The more he studied them, the more frustrated he became. These weren't just slightly flawed, they were fundamentally misconceived. The company that made them had clearly prioritized aesthetics and durability over actual functionality. The braces looked impressive, with their sleek titanium finish and complex joint mechanisms, but they forced Lily's body into positions that fought against natural human movement. By 3 a.m., Daniel had filled an entire notebook with sketches and calculations. He saw exactly what needed to change. The weight needed to be reduced by at least 40%. The knee joints needed to allow natural flex rather than rigid support. The hip connections had to distribute pressure across a wider surface area, and the entire structure needed to work with gravity instead of against it. But seeing the problem and solving it were two different things. Daniel pulled out his phone and started researching, diving deep into biomechanics articles, watching videos of how the human leg actually moved during walking, studying the physics of gait and balance. He wasn't trying to become a doctor overnight. He was trying to understand the machine of the human body well enough to build better support for it. As dawn broke over Austin, Daniel heard the familiar sound of an expensive engine. He looked up, surprised to see the Range Rover pulling into his lot. It was barely 6 a.m. Catherine stepped out first, looking like she hadn't slept either. Lily emerged more slowly, struggling with the older braces she mentioned. These were even more cumbersome than the expensive pair, clearly outdated technology that creaked with every movement. "I know it's early," Catherine said, approaching the garage. "But neither of us could sleep. We kept thinking about—" She trailed off, her professional composure slipping. "We kept hoping." Daniel stood, suddenly self-conscious about his rumpled clothes and the wild scatter of papers covering his workspace. "I'm glad you're here. I've been working all night, and I need to show you something." He led them to the workbench where Lily's braces lay, partially disassembled. Beside them, he arranged his sketches and notes, a visual representation of everything he discovered. "The problem isn't just one thing," Daniel explained, his exhaustion giving way to excited energy. "It's a cascade of engineering failures. Look here." He pointed to the knee joint. "This forces your leg to bend at a 90-degree angle, which seems logical, right? But that's not how humans actually walk. Our knees have a natural slight bend even when standing, and during walking, the angle constantly shifts. By locking the joint like this, every step requires you to fight against the brace itself." Lily leaned forward, fascinated despite her pain. "So my legs are basically battling the braces with every movement?" "Exactly," Daniel said. "And that's just the start. The weight distribution puts 70% of the load on your hips and knees, when it should be spread evenly across your entire leg. Plus, these pressure points." He indicated several spots on the inner supports. "They're positioned where major nerves run close to the skin. That's why you have constant pain and bruising." Catherine was staring at the diagrams with growing amazement. "How did you figure all this out?" Daniel shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "Same way I diagnose a car. You look at what's supposed to happen, compare it to what is happening, and trace back to find where the system breaks down. A transmission and a human leg aren't that different. They're both systems designed for efficient movement and force distribution." "What do you need to fix it?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's when Daniel hesitated. He got this far on analysis, but actual reconstruction required materials he didn't have. The aluminum I need for the new frame, the specialized joints that allow multi-directional movement, the padding that won't cause friction burns. It's going to cost about $2,000 in materials alone. He said it apologetically, knowing it would sound like nothing to a billionaire, but was far beyond what his struggling garage could afford. Catherine pulled out her phone without hesitation. "Give me a list. I'll have everything here by this afternoon." "Mrs. Stone, I can't let you." "Daniel," she interrupted, and it was the first time she used his first name. "My daughter has suffered for 11 years. I've spent millions on treatments that didn't work. $2,000 to give you a chance to help her? That's not generosity. That's hope, and hope is priceless." Something shifted in that moment. Daniel realized this wasn't about pride or charity. It was about three people united by a common purpose. He nodded and quickly wrote out a detailed list of materials, including specifications that surprised Catherine with their precision. "I'll get started on the frame while we wait for the supplies," Daniel said. "I have enough scrap aluminum here to build the basic structure." "Can I watch?" Lily asked suddenly. Daniel smiled. "I'd like that." For the next several hours, Lily sat on a stool in Daniel's workshop while he worked. Catherine made calls from the office area, coordinating deliveries and rearranging her schedule. The garage filled with the sounds of cutting, welding, and grinding as Daniel shaped metal with the same care a sculptor approaches marble. Lily asked constant questions, genuinely interested in the process. "Why that angle for the joint?" "Because your ankle naturally rotates about 7 degrees during a normal step," Daniel explained, not talking down to her, but treating her like a colleague. If we lock it straight, every step jars your knee and hip, but if we allow that natural rotation, the force gets absorbed smoothly. You make it sound so simple. The concept is simple, Daniel said, carefully filing down a rough edge. The execution is what takes work, but that's true of anything worth doing. As they talked, Daniel learned more about Lily's life, how she loved dancing before the accident, how she gave up on college because navigating a campus seemed impossible, how she spent most of her time at home, isolated and slowly giving up on dreams she once held. I used to want to be a teacher, she admitted quietly. I loved working with kids, but how could I manage a classroom when I can barely walk across a room? Daniel paused in his work. If these new braces work the way I think they will, maybe you'll get to find out. The materials arrived by early afternoon, delivered by a medical supply courier who looked confused to be making a drop-off at an auto garage. Daniel unpacked everything with reverence. Advanced composite materials, specialized joint mechanisms, medical-grade padding and straps. But as he laid everything out, preparing to begin the real construction, his phone rang. It was his landlord. The building that housed his garage had been sold to a development company. He had 30 days to vacate. Daniel felt the floor drop out from under him. This garage was his entire life, his livelihood, his home away from home. Without it, he had nothing. No way to work, no way to earn money, nowhere to help Lily. Catherine saw his face go pale. "What's wrong?" he explained, trying to keep his voice steady. Catherine immediately went into problem-solving mode. "I can find you a new location. I know commercial real estate. I can have you set up somewhere better within a week." But Daniel shook his head. "Mrs. Stone, I appreciate it, but I can't afford rent in any property you have access to. This place is cheap because it's falling apart. That's the only reason I can make it work." "Then I'll cover the rent," Catherine said simply. "No." Daniel's response was firm but not unkind. "I can't accept that. It wouldn't be right." Catherine looked frustrated, clearly not used to people refusing her help. But before she could argue, Lily spoke up. "What if it wasn't charity?" Lily said slowly, an idea forming. "What if Mom invested in you? Like a business investment?" Both adults turned to look at her. "Think about it," Lily continued, gaining confidence. "If Daniel can really fix my braces, if he can do what the best companies couldn't, then other people need to know about it. You could open a real workshop, help people who can't afford those $75,000 devices. Mom could be a silent partner, and once you start helping people and getting known, you pay her back from the business revenue." Daniel stared at the young woman, amazed by her generosity even while dealing with her own struggles. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, clearly running calculations in her head. "That could work," Catherine finally said. "But only if these braces actually function. So here's what we do. You finish Lily's braces first. If they work, we talk about the future. Deal?" Daniel looked between mother and daughter, seeing the faith they were placing in him, and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. "Deal," he said. "But I need to be honest with you both. I've never done anything like this before. I could fail." "You could," Lily agreed, her eyes meeting his with startling intensity. "But you're the first person who's actually looked at my braces and seen them as a problem to solve instead of just accepting them as they are. That alone makes you different from every expert we've met." Daniel nodded slowly, then turned back to his workbench. The materials were laid out before him, a challenge and an opportunity combined. He picked up his tools, took a deep breath, and began to build something that might change everything. Behind him, Lily and Catherine watched with hope neither of them had dared to feel in years. And in that moment, Daniel Traven stopped being just a mechanic. He became something more, a bridge between what was and what could be, armed with nothing but skill, determination, and an unshakable belief that broken things could always be fixed, if you knew the right way to look at them. Daniel worked with intensity he never felt before, transforming raw materials into something that looked more like art than medical equipment. The new braces took shape over 3 grueling days. Lightweight aluminum formed the main structure, flexible joints allowed natural movement, and cushioned supports distributed weight evenly. Catherine visited every afternoon after work, watching his progress with cautious optimism. Lily came every single day, becoming his assistant, handing him tools and asking questions that showed she understood more about engineering than most people with degrees. "Why curved instead of straight here?" she'd ask, pointing to the calf support. "Because your calf muscle isn't flat," Daniel explained patiently. "It curves and flexes. The brace needs to move with it, not against it." Their conversations flowed naturally between technical details and personal stories. Daniel learned that Lily had been accepted to UT Austin before the accident, planning to study education. She deferred for a year, then two, then eventually gave up entirely. "Maybe it's time to reapply," Daniel suggested one afternoon, carefully adjusting a joint mechanism. "Maybe," Lily said softly, and for the first time, she sounded like she actually believed it. But doubt crept in during the quiet moments. Late at night, alone in his garage, Daniel would stare at his creation and wonder if he was a fool. What if the braces didn't work? What if he gave Lily false hope? What if he wasted Catherine's money and trust? On the third day, as he made final adjustments, his hands actually trembled. This wasn't like fixing an engine where the worst outcome was an unhappy customer. This was someone's life, someone's mobility, someone's future. Catherine noticed his anxiety. "Daniel, whatever happens, you've already given us something precious." "What's that?" "You've shown my daughter that someone cares enough to try. That's more than most people have given her in 11 years. On the morning of the fourth day, the braces were complete. They looked nothing like the expensive titanium devices Lily had worn before. These were sleeker, almost elegant in their simplicity. The frame was silvery gray, the joints visible but not bulky, the padding a soft medical-grade foam that wouldn't cause friction. Daniel had barely slept, running final tests on every connection point, every strap, every angle of movement. When Catherine and Lily arrived, he had the braces laid out on a clean cloth like precious artifacts. Lily approached slowly, her current braces creaking with each step. She reached out and touched the new ones, running her fingers along the smooth metal. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Let's see if they work," Daniel said, his voice tight with nervousness. Catherine helped Lily sit on the workbench while Daniel knelt before her, gently removing the old braces. The marks on Lily's legs made him wince. Years of pressure and friction had left permanent scars. "This might feel strange at first," Daniel warned as he carefully positioned the new braces. "Your body is used to fighting against resistance. These are designed to work with you instead." He secured each strap with meticulous care, checking and rechecking every connection. The new braces hugged Lily's legs without pinching, the weight distributed so evenly she gasped. "I can barely feel them," she said, wondering in her voice. "That's the point," Daniel smiled, though his heart was pounding. "Can you stand?" Catherine moved close, hands hovering protectively as Lily gripped the edges of the workbench. Daniel positioned himself beside her, ready to catch her if needed. Lily pushed herself up slowly, cautiously. The braces responded smoothly, joints flexing naturally with her movement. She rose to her full height without the violent wobbling that usually accompanied standing. "Oh my God," Catherine breathed. Lily stood there, perfectly balanced, her eyes wide with shock. "It doesn't hurt. Mom, it doesn't hurt." "Try a step," Daniel said gently, his throat tight with emotion. "Just one. Listen to your body." Lily took a breath and shifted her weight forward. Her right foot lifted and moved forward with control she hadn't felt in over a decade. It touched down smoothly, and the brace absorbed the impact without jarring her knee. Then her left foot followed, then her right again. Lily Stone was walking across Daniel Traven's garage floor. Catherine burst into tears, covering her mouth with both hands as she watched her daughter move with a grace that had been stolen 11 years ago. Daniel felt his own eyes burning, unable to believe what he was witnessing. But then Lily's expression changed. She stopped, confusion crossing her face. "What's wrong?" Catherine rushed forward. "Nothing's wrong," Lily said slowly, a strange smile spreading across her face. "I just realized I've walked 20 steps. I haven't walked 20 steps without stopping in 11 years. She looked at Daniel with tears streaming down her face. "You gave me my life back." The celebration in the garage lasted for hours. Lily walked back and forth, testing her new mobility, while Catherine called everyone she knew to share the miracle. Daniel felt like he was floating, watching this brave young woman discover freedom she thought was gone forever. But reality crashed back in that evening. After Catherine and Lily left, promising to return the next day for a follow-up, Daniel received an email that made his blood run cold. The developer buying his building had accelerated the timeline. He had 2 weeks to vacate, not 30 days. 2 weeks to shut down his entire life. He sat in the dark garage, surrounded by his tools and memories, and felt despair creeping in. Yes, he helped Lily, and that would always matter, but he was about to lose everything. No garage meant no income. No income meant no home. He poured his last dollars into materials for Lily's braces, leaving him with almost nothing. The next morning, he forced himself to smile when Lily and Catherine arrived. Lily was wearing the braces, having slept in them comfortably for the first time in years. She demonstrated her improved walking, now managing 50 steps without pause. "We need to talk about the business partnership," Catherine said excitedly. "I've been making calls. There are foundations that would fund this work, grants for medical innovation." "Mrs. Stone," Daniel interrupted gently, "I need to tell you something." He explained about the accelerated eviction, about his financial situation, about how he'd soon have nowhere to work. Catherine listened with growing concern, then immediately pulled out her phone. "I'll handle this. I can negotiate with the developer or find you a new space, or—" "No," Daniel said firmly. "You've already done too much. This is my problem to solve." "But you can't just give up." Lily's voice cracked with emotion. "You saved me. Let us save you back." Daniel shook his head, fighting to keep his composure. "What I did for you wasn't about expecting something in return. It was about doing what was right, and taking charity, even from people I care about, wouldn't be right for me. I need to figure this out on my own." The garage fell silent, tension thick in the air. Catherine looked frustrated, Lily looked heartbroken, and Daniel felt like he was drowning. He gives someone their miracle, only to lose his own foundation in the process. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lily's face when she took those first steps, about the tears in Catherine's eyes, about the possibility that he might have to walk away from the only work that had ever truly mattered to him. Around midnight, his phone rang. It was Catherine, her voice urgent. "Turn on your computer. Check your email. Now." Confused, Daniel opened his laptop and refreshed his inbox. What he saw made him freeze. Over 60 messages from people across Texas, parents of disabled children, adults with mobility issues, veterans with injuries, all asking if he could help them the way he helped Lily Stone. "How did they?" Daniel started. "I posted about what you did on my social media," Catherine admitted. "I didn't use your name or location, just explained that a mechanic with no formal training had built better braces than medical companies charging $75,000. I thought maybe a few people would be interested." "Daniel, my post has been shared 10,000 times in 6 hours." Daniel scrolled through the messages, each one a story of struggle, of expensive devices that didn't work, of people who had been failed by the system. His hands shook as he read them. "There's something else," Catherine continued. 3 of those messages are from orthopedic surgeons asking about your technique. One is from a medical device company wanting to license your design. And one, her voice cracked slightly, is from a mother whose 8-year-old daughter has the same condition Lily did. She's offering to fly here from Oklahoma just for a chance at what you built. Daniel sat in the darkness of his garage, surrounded by tools and possibility, and felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't even just about Lily. "What do I do?" he whispered. "You let me help you," Catherine said firmly. "Not as charity, as a real business partner. We create a foundation, the Traven Mobility Foundation. You design the devices, I provide the funding and infrastructure. We help people who can't afford the expensive solutions. We prove that innovation doesn't require a medical degree, just a good heart and skilled hands." Daniel thought about every person who ever trusted him to fix their car, about the quiet satisfaction of solving problems, about Lily's tears of joy when she walked across his garage. "On one condition," he said finally, "we help people regardless of their ability to pay. Rich or poor, everyone deserves to walk." "Deal," Catherine said immediately. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start building something bigger than both of us." As Daniel hung up, he looked around his shabby garage one last time. It had been his sanctuary, but maybe it was time for something more. Maybe losing this place wasn't an ending. Maybe it was just the beginning. We're in the home stretch now. Can you feel it? Drop a comment if this story is hitting you in the heart, and make sure you're subscribed because the ending is going to leave you smiling. Within 2 weeks, Catherine had secured a building, not a garage this time, but a proper workshop with clean floors, professional equipment, and enough space to help multiple people at once. The sign outside read, Traven Mobility Solutions, Making Hope Walk. Daniel stood in the doorway on opening day, overwhelmed by how much his life had transformed. Catherine had structured everything as a legitimate nonprofit, with Daniel as chief engineer and her as managing director. They hired 2 assistants and partnered with physical therapists who believed in Daniel's approach. The waiting list was already 3 months long. Their first official client was 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez from Oklahoma, the girl whose mother had reached out that desperate night. Daniel worked with the same meticulous care he showed Lily, building custom braces that accounted for Emma's smaller frame and unique needs. When Emma took her first independent steps, her parents collapsed in grateful tears. Daniel felt something he never experienced before, the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Word spread rapidly. Local news covered the story, then state media, then national outlets picked it up. Mechanic's miracle, man with no medical training, revolutionizes mobility devices, read one headline. But Daniel avoided the attention, preferring to stay in his workshop, doing the work. Lily became the foundation's spokesperson, sharing her story at fundraisers and medical conferences. She walked onto stages with confidence that made Daniel's heart swell with pride. She also reapplied to UT Austin and was accepted into their education program. "I'm going to be a teacher after all," she told Daniel one afternoon, her eyes shining. "And I'm going to tell my students that impossible is just another word for something that hasn't happened yet." The medical community initially resisted Daniel's methods. How could an untrained mechanic succeed where they failed? But when orthopedic surgeons examined his work, they found innovations that challenged conventional thinking. His understanding of weight distribution, joint mechanics, and natural movement had produced results that medical textbooks said shouldn't be possible. Several universities invited him to lecture. Medical device companies wanted to buy his designs. But Daniel refused every corporate offer, staying true to his promise that profit would never come before people. By the 6-month mark, the Traven Mobility Foundation had helped 43 people walk who previously struggled with mobility. Each success felt like a miracle, but Daniel knew the truth. It was just good engineering combined with genuine care. Catherine watched him work one evening, marveling at how this humble mechanic had changed so many lives. "You know what I've learned from you?" she said quietly. "What's that?" "That the most valuable expertise isn't always found in the places we expect to look. Sometimes it's in a dusty garage, in calloused hands that know how to fix broken things." Daniel smiled, adjusting a brace for their newest client. "I just do what I've always done, see a problem and figure out how to solve it." "No," Catherine corrected gently. "You see people and figure out how to help them. That's what makes you extraordinary." 1 year after that fateful morning when a Range Rover pulled into his garage, Daniel stood at the Traven Mobility Foundation's anniversary celebration. The workshop was filled with families, parents, children, veterans, elderly folks, all united by one thing: Daniel had given them freedom. Lily walked to the microphone without assistance, her movements now so natural that strangers wouldn't know she ever struggled. She wore a beautiful blue dress and radiated confidence. "A year ago, I couldn't walk 20 steps without pain," she told the crowd. "Today, I walk 3 miles on campus between classes. But this story isn't really about me. It's about what happens when someone chooses to see possibility instead of limitation." She turned to Daniel, who stood awkwardly in the back, uncomfortable with attention. "Daniel Traven didn't save my life because he had fancy degrees or expensive equipment. He saved it because he had something more important. He cared enough to try when everyone else had given up." The room erupted in applause. Catherine stood beside Daniel, smiling with satisfaction. The foundation was thriving, helping people across 3 states now. They just received a major grant to expand their services, and Daniel had trained 2 other mechanics in his techniques. After the celebration wound down, Daniel found himself alone in the workshop with Lily and Catherine. The 3 of them had become family over the past year, bound by something deeper than blood. "I have news," Lily announced, her eyes sparkling. "I've been accepted into a graduate program for adaptive physical education. I want to work with disabled kids, help them see that their challenges don't define their worth." "That's perfect," Daniel said, genuine pride warming his voice. "You're going to change so many lives." "I learned from the best," Lily replied, hugging him tightly. Catherine pulled out an envelope and handed it to Daniel. "This is the Foundation's financial report. We're completely self-sustaining now through grants and donations. Which means," she smiled, "you officially don't owe me a single penny. You've paid back every dollar through the lives you've changed." Daniel opened the envelope and saw the numbers, proof that his work had value beyond anything he'd imagined. But more than that, he saw testimonial letters from families, photographs of people walking who couldn't before, thank you notes from children who could now play with their friends. "You know what's funny?" Daniel said quietly. "I thought losing my garage was the worst thing that could happen, but it turned out to be the best. Sometimes we have to lose what we think we need to find what we're actually meant to do." As the sun set over Austin, casting golden light through the workshop windows, the 3 of them stood together in comfortable silence. A billionaire who learned that money couldn't buy everything. A young woman who discovered that her disability didn't diminish her strength. And a mechanic who proved that the greatest expertise often comes from the heart, not from a textbook. Daniel looked around at the braces hanging on the walls, each one custom-built for someone who needed help. This was his legacy now. Not fixed cars, but restored hope. Not repaired engines, but rebuilt lives. And somewhere out there, in small towns and big cities across America, people were walking because a humble mechanic had refused to accept that broken things couldn't be fixed. Because Daniel Traven had learned something that the world too often forgot. Miracles don't require credentials or wealth or prestige. They just require someone who cares enough to try. And that's the end of our story, friends. If this touched your heart, please leave a comment telling us what resonated with you. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that hope is real and kindness matters. And don't forget to subscribe to Unbroken Truths. We bring you stories like this every week, stories that prove humanity is still beautiful, still worth believing in. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep your faith strong and your heart open. The world needs more people like Daniel Traven. Maybe that person is you.